Shalom from Israel to all of the Daystar viewers around the world. I'm Moshe Bar Tzvi, the producer and founder of Israel Now News. We at Israel Now News are dedicated to bringing you the full story and the truth about Israel from Israel. It's written in the Holy Bible when David said in Psalm 25:5, "Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long." And God says in Zechariah 8:16, "These are the things that you shall do. Speak out the truth to one another. Judge with truth and judgment to peace in your gates. And always search for the truth, and the truth shall set you free." John 8:31. I hope you enjoyed the program. God bless you from Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom.
Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner.
In our top story, the Iranian government is voting on a resolution to close the Strait of Hormuz. In retaliation for the sanctions imposed against its oil exports, the Iranian National Security and Foreign Policy Committee has drafted a bill to block the Strait of Hormuz. 100 of the 290 members of parliament have already signed the measure, endorsing the closure of the strategic waterway. Ibrahim Adha Mohammadi, an Iranian lawmaker, said the bill stresses the blocking of oil tanker traffic carrying crude to countries that have sanctioned Iran. And he added that this legislation was created as an answer to the European Union's oil sanctions against the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Strait of Hormuz is the world's most important waterway. About 20% of the world's oil supply passes through the narrow strait, which is the sole channel into the open ocean from the oil-rich Persian Gulf.
The State of Israel is mourning the death of its former Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir, who served the nation in many capacities throughout his life. Shamir fought in the Jewish Underground Army before the founding of the state, and after 1948 he served in the Mossad intelligence agency. He went on to be Foreign Minister, Speaker of the Knesset, Leader of the Opposition, and he served 2 terms as Prime Minister of the State of Israel. He was known for maintaining a strong stance against making concessions in the peace process, yet he made great strides in negotiations with the Palestinians. Born in the Belarus Republic of Russia, Shamir studied law in Warsaw, but immigrated to Mandatory Palestine in 1935 and was the only member of his family to survive the Holocaust. His sisters and mother were murdered in the death camps, and his father was betrayed and then murdered by his childhood friends in his hometown. Israel's current Speaker of the Knesset, Reuven Rivlin, eulogized Shamir, saying that to really understand him and his refusal to be enticed by diplomatic overtures that would have weakened Israel, one needed to have heard him speak on Holocaust Remembrance Day. Quoting the prophet Ezekiel, Rivlin said that Shamir was a symbol of Israel's rising from the ashes of the Holocaust to strength. Israel's 7th Prime Minister, Yitzhak Shamir, was laid to rest in the National Mount Herzl Cemetery in Jerusalem.
In a special briefing to the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that the series of meetings that Iran held with world powers failed to deter the Islamic Republic's resolve to build a nuclear weapon. He said the Iranians continue enriching uranium. They declared that they will not backtrack from their plans by even a millimeter. Netanyahu revealed that the hardline Islamic Republic now has enough enriched uranium to build 3 atomic bombs. The Israeli Prime Minister concluded that the Iranian nuclear issue poses a huge threat to our people.
The Palestinians are declaring victory after UNESCO voted to accept Bethlehem's Church of the Nativity as a World Heritage Site. By declaring that the church is in a state of emergency and in need of immediate funds for its restoration, the PA was able to bypass the standard 18-month acceptance process. Many saw the move as a scheme to further validate the Palestinian claim to the land of Israel. Palestinian Prime Minister Salam Fayyad described the move as a strengthening of the Palestinians' determination to act toward the establishment of an independent state according to the 1967 borders. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations David Killian expressed Washington's profound disappointment at the decision, and Israel's Office of the Prime Minister released a statement accusing UNESCO of being motivated by political and not cultural considerations. Instead of taking steps to promote peace, read the statement, The Palestinians are taking unilateral action that drives the prospects of peace further away. And the world must remember that the Church of the Nativity is holy to Christianity and has been the target of vandalism by Palestinian terrorists.
An Israeli military court sentenced Hamas terrorist Ibrahim Hamed to 54 life sentences for his role in terror attacks which killed 46 Israelis. Hamed was convicted last month for some of the worst terrorist attacks in Israel's history. Among them was the bombing at Café Moment in 2002, the Zion Square attack in 2001, the 2002 attack at the Sheffield Club in Rishon LeZion, the bombing of the Frank Sinatra cafeteria at Hebrew University in 2002, and the Café Hillel bombing in 2003. In response to the sentence, Hamed's lawyer stated that he does not acknowledge the authority of Israeli courts.
The Palestinian Authority has requested an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council on Israel's policy of building in Judea and Samaria. The PLO Executive Committee released a statement saying that it has decided to pursue contacts with all international blocs of the Security Council to adopt a resolution against Israeli settlements. This move comes just after a high-level meeting between the two sides was canceled. Israel's Deputy Prime Minister Shaul Mofaz was set to meet with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in Ramallah, but that was torpedoed after great pressure from Palestinian protesters was brought to bear on the Palestinian Attorney General to detain Mofaz if he entered Ramallah, saying that Abbas should be ashamed for agreeing to meet with the ex-Israeli general. One activist said that the demonstrators demanded that Mofaz be arrested instead of greeted. Israel's official response is that the two leaders' meeting was canceled due to an internal matter that required the immediate attention of the vice premier.
The South African government is considering a bill which would require all products produced in the biblical heartland of Judea and Samaria to be labeled as made in the Palestinian territories. In response to the proposal, Christians and Jews joined together in South Africa to protest the unfair marketing of Israeli products in their country. Hundreds attended the protest, which was organized by the African Christian Democratic Party. The following day, 800 protesters rallied in support of Israel outside the South African Parliament in Cape Town. Representatives of both the Jewish and Christian communities in South Africa have submitted their written opposition to the bill, and Israel's ambassador to South Africa submitted Israel's official response. Ambassador Dov Segev-Steinberg said, "The proposal goes against the agreements reached between Israel and the Palestinians and compromises the bilateral ties between South Africa and the Jewish state."
The International Christian Embassy of Jerusalem, together with the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus, hosted a panel to expose the plight of Christians in Africa. The panel was attended by numerous distinguished members of Knesset, as well as several African pastors who briefed the Knesset on the violence and vicious persecution of Christians committed against the community by Muslim militias in sub-Saharan Africa. Reverend Dr. Abu Maiga said that the radical Islamist agenda in the Sahel of Africa not only includes terrorism against civilians and the persecution of Christians, but also the increasing danger of secessionism. He went on to warn that following the precedent of Mali, more and more Muslim-majority areas will now demand to separate and form their own countries, which will be Islamist-controlled and oriented. The panel was also addressed by Pastor Omar Mulinde, who was attacked on Christmas Eve by Muslim terrorists. He sustained severe facial wounds after acid was thrown in his face and has been receiving treatment at Israel's Sheba Medical Center. Pastor Mulinde told the Knesset panel that radicals within the Muslim faith have gained control over mosques in Africa and elsewhere, from which they propagate their militant message of world domination. He added that the militants are also educating the younger generation to hate Christians, Israel, and our democratic freedoms.
The Israel Antiquities Authority has released details of the discovery of one of the most elaborate synagogues ever found in Israel. The synagogue, located in the ancient city of Hukuk in the Lower Galilee, is said to be about 1,600 years old. Inside the synagogue, archaeologists unearthed a breathtaking mosaic depicting the story of Samson and the two foxes from the Book of Judges. There was also a large Hebrew inscription which praises those who perform acts of kindness and good deeds.
And that concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host Josh Reinstein, and we're here on a beautiful day in Jerusalem on our rooftop studio. Our guest today is Stuart Katz, President and CEO of Isramedica. Stuart, thank you for being on the show.
Great, Josh. It's wonderful to be here.
Stuart, you work in a fascinating field called medical tourism. Can you explain our viewers a little bit about what is medical tourism?
Sure, Josh. Medical tourism is basically where viewers in one country reside and they go to another country for treatment or elective or mandatory procedure.
Now, you bring people from abroad to Israel. Why would people choose to come to Israel to have their medical procedures rather than at home?
Well, there are a few reasons someone would come to Israel rather than complete the procedure at home. First and foremost, Israel is the Holy Land, the one and only, and anyone would rather come and have the healing process done in the land where Jesus himself healed. The second reason is that the medical care in Israel is superior to many other countries around the world. And thirdly, the cost factor. Israel is very, very affordable in terms of medical care. So when you combine the three reasons, the cost, the standard of medicine, and the healing process, there's no place better in the world than here in Israel.
Now, your major market to market to is America, where they just passed their landmark health reform. Does that health reform have an effect on people wanting to go abroad to have their medical procedures?
It's an interesting question that you ask. The Healthcare Reformation Act of 2014, which has yet to completely come into law, is going to take a tremendous change in the entire medical system in the U.S. How it'll affect medical tourism, we're certainly uncertain. But we do know one thing, is whether the law comes into being or doesn't come into being in its current state, it's going to drastically change the medical tourist industry and only increase it. There are a few reasons for it. If it comes into being as currently enacted, then there are going to be 40 million new people coming into the medical system in the U.S. Frankly, the U.S. system, as it stands today, is not equipped and able to handle the additional 40 million people that are going to come in. If it doesn't come into being, we still have 40 million people that are uninsured. They can't afford health care in the U.S., so they need to go abroad. So irregardless of what happens, the medical tourism industry has grown since it started about 8 or 10 years ago and is booming by leaps and bounds at present.
You know, you call it medical tourism. Is there a tourism component to it? Do people actually tour Israel before or after the procedures as well?
So in terms of the tourism component, the answer in simple terms is yes, they do. But it depends on the procedure that they're coming for. Many of the procedures that people come to Israel for are elective procedures. With those, the procedure is rather simple. It's usually going into a medical facility, whether a hospital or a clinic, and it can take a few hours. And the recovery process or the monitoring process that we require of them could take up to a few weeks. During that time, they should tour. After all, they're here. Many of the medical tourists that come over are able to actually do more extensive tours than if they had come on a typical Holy Land tour or pilgrimage of 9 to 10 days because they're here for a greater length of time. The second aspect is we don't take any medical tourists alone. They come with at least one companion, and oftentimes they'll come with their entire family. So our interest is not only in providing the medical care, which is the primary interest, but it's also in providing the tour component for those that are accompanying the patient.
You know, something interesting is that there are over 7 million people in Israel. There are a limited amount of hospitals. Is there enough hospital room space to take on this new area of medical tourism?
So it depends who you ask. If you were to ask the Israeli government, chances are they would tell you that there's not enough space, that the facilities are currently saturated. We deal primarily with private hospitals. The private hospitals certainly have extra room, and the other thing is, in terms of medical procedures, in general, the Israeli operating rooms in the Israeli hospitals operate from early in the morning until mid-afternoon. The medical tourist that comes over really doesn't care at what time of the day the procedure is performed. So our attitude is, you know what? Let them take the morning off, take it at leisure, and let's do the procedures for the tourists from 3 in the afternoon until midnight when the rooms are empty.
We're here now in the holy city of Jerusalem, and most of our viewers are Christians. What effect would be having their medical procedure here in Jerusalem have on them spiritually, do you think? Would it have an effect, or is it just business as usual?
It depends who you ask. For most people would say just by being here, part of recovery in any kind of medical procedure, whether done at home or abroad, is going to be the psychological aspect. And certainly when you're in a place that you love, a place that you can relate to, the spirituality that surrounds you is going to help in the recovery process. So without question, being in Jerusalem or anywhere else in the Holy Land, the recovery process is bound to be faster.
Stuart, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message would you have for our audience?
The simple message is you should come to Israel for medical tourism. You should come to Israel at any time. For as the saying goes, there is no place like home. And when you come to Israel, you'll truly be home. And when you come to Israel, you'll never be the same.
Thank you, Stuart, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, shining light from Israel.
What makes the miracles of Jesus even more miraculous? Standing where they happened, in Israel. Come visit Capernaum, where Jesus restored a paralytic's helpless legs. Sail the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus walked on the water. Stroll through the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus healed a servant's ear. To learn more about standing where it all happened, in Israel, visit www.goisrael.com. Come visit Israel.
I'll be talking to you today about what we'll be doing here. We'll be capturing the hills, my whole pluga, which pluga is my whole unit. We've been practicing for months now. We've been physically training very, very intensively so we can be ready for this, because it's a lot of walking, a lot of running, and it's very, very difficult. But we all feel very ready, very excited, so we really feel ready.
Shira Landau is a soldier in the Caracal unit of the IDF, a unit tasked with protecting Israeli borders. After months of intensive training, this will be their final test, the capture of a local hill. It is the largest drill of their training and is made all the more intensive due to the use of live fire. If the soldiers pass the test, they will be allowed to graduate into active duty and become operational soldiers in the IDF. Starting in the early morning hours, the drill begins with a briefing of the day's exercise. Their instructor knows that he is largely responsible for the success or failure of his soldiers in the field. Following their briefing, they deploy to take their places. What begins as a routine patrol soon develops into a combat situation when the unit is informed of the enemy's presence in the area. The soldiers' coordination is flawless as they take the hill. Because vertical terrain inherently favors the king of the hill, the soldiers' advanced technique is made all the more important if their capture is to be a success.
Prior to the army, I was always a big patriot. Like every summer I would come to Israel for a month, and I was always like really fascinated watching the soldiers, and I would always question them and go on loads of forums, and I don't know, I was always really fascinated by the army world for some reason. And when I was studying there, I realized I think that's the choice for me. It feels really good. Like, I was really, really excited and nervous before, and I didn't know how it would turn out because we're a big unit. It's about 100 of us, so we didn't know how it would turn out. So many of us, like, capturing the hill together. But it was incredible, and we've got really, really good feedback, and I've got like such an adrenaline rush right now, and I just don't know what to do with myself. I'm just really excited. On the other hand, I'm pretty sad because it's all coming to an end. Like, the last 6 months have been incredible. It's been an experience that I couldn't even dream of, and no matter how many people were telling me it's going to be a really special experience for me, like, I couldn't have dreamt of this. It's been so unique, and physically I feel really good, and emotionally, and although I'm missing my family every day, I feel like I'm in such a good place, and spiritually I'm getting stronger, and I just feel really, really good.
Please stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem.
What makes the miracles of Jesus even more miraculous? Standing where they happened, in Israel. Come explore Jerusalem, where Jesus opened blind eyes. Visit the hills of Galilee, where Jesus fed the multitude. Stroll through Capernaum, where Jesus lived and taught and healed. To learn more about standing where it all happened in Israel, visit www.goisrael.com. Come visit Israel.
You'll never be the same.
One of the strategic goals of the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem is to promote Jewish-Christian dialogue on important issues impacting the world today. Special conferences recently presented by the ICEJ in Russia and Brazil provided opportunities for members of Israel's parliament to connect with key evangelical leaders from these countries.
In the light of centuries of Christian anti-Semitism and the tragic history of Jewish-Christian relations, the establishment of a Christian Allies Caucus in the Israeli Knesset, the Israeli parliament, is truly a historic development. Just to think about the centuries of atrocities of Christians against the Jewish people, and to see today a group of 20 parliamentarians of the Israeli Knesset to reach out to evangelical Christians, this is something which needs our prayer and our support.
Recently, the ICEJ partnered with the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus to present a special briefing to members of Israel's parliament on the current Islamist campaign of violence against Christians in sub-Saharan Africa and its impact on Israel and the region.
Uganda is traditionally known as a country of Christian revival in spite of a strong Islamic presence there. And also we see some very encouraging signs in countries like Mali and Chad and Senegal. And both Pastor Mulinde from Uganda and Pastor Mega Abdu, they can testify about these exciting developments, but also, of course, about the pressure which they face from the radical Islamic forces in this part of the world.
The briefing presented eyewitness testimony from African pastors, both of whom are former Muslims, about the effects of the radical Islamic agenda in their nations and how their conversion to Christianity changed their perspectives regarding the nation of Israel.
I'm here as a victim of sectarian and religious persecution. I have been in Israel before, but I've been coming as a friend, as a guest. When I was a Muslim, I hated Israel. People must understand this. The hatred against Israel is much more orchestrated by religion than politics. So there is a bond in the minds of people there is another faith that teaches hatred instead of love. And if that is not solved, the issue of the Middle East will be a challenge, because there is another group that is taught to hate others.
It's going to be deeper and more democratic in those countries who come from the Arab Spring. Is what, according to my small analysis, we are in a transition. This transition is occupied by some Islamist group, but is going to move ahead and things will change.
I have been following, Mr. Chairman, the ICJ for the last 32 years. Really, since its beginning in 1980. And the chairman spoke about the size of Israel. You have mentioned the size of Israel, but we have forgotten that we have been enlarged by friends of Israel. And ICJ has enlarged our capacity to function, has enlarged our capacity to work towards the international community.
This work of the International Christian Embassy with Israeli officials like Knesset members is an important segment of the work of the ICJ here in Jerusalem. We are your embassy here in Jerusalem. We represent you towards the state of Israel, but also we represent the state of Israel, a nation of Israel, towards many Christians all over the world. And in order to enable us to do so, we ask you today to put a financial gift, a financial seed into our ministry in order to more effectively bless and comfort the Jewish people here in Zion. We are your embassy in Jerusalem, and please pray for us, support us financially, and stand behind us as we are standing with Israel. May the Lord bless you here from Zion.
What makes the miracles of Jesus even more miraculous? Standing where they happened, in Israel. Come sail the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus calmed a raging storm. Experience Jerusalem, where Jesus restored a paralyzed man. Explore Capernaum, where Jesus spoke a centurion servant into health. To learn more about standing where it all happened, in Israel, visit goisrael.com. Come visit Israel.
You'll never be the same.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner. Please join us again next week for all your Israel updates.